We are in a world of essentially simultaneous caca storms, Mike, to the extent that it's almost difficult to decide what to talk about. How are you tonight?
Hey, man. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff because we always talk about a lot of stuff.
You're looking remarkably high resolution, smooth frame rate. It's just really beautiful picture today, Mike.
I cut out all the gluten in my diet, so I think it's paying off.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Just what people want to see, a clear picture and crisp picture of a guy who's going down tubes like the tail end of Hemingway.
Nah,
Ernest Hemingway.
nothing like that. Nothing like that. But it is true. You know, you and I, Mike, we're very focused on making the shows as not only informative and entertaining as they can possibly be, but, you know, all the technical aspects, we're constantly looking out for that, upgrading this, upgrading that. It's sometimes not immediately obvious to people, but, you know, this is what we do in the world of independent media, and we rely on the viewers to sponsor the show rather than some of these other operations where they've got big pharma and you don't really know what their agenda is.
Yeah, it's always hard when you're bootstrapping any type of an operation, but I mean that's what America's all about. If you think you can do something better than the big guys, you say, all right, you throw your hat in the arena and let's go. Let's do it. Let's see if we can make it. Let's see if I'm as good as I think I am, or I can get as good as some of the big guys are. And now with today, with the internet and everything, there are no excuses for at least taking a chance. You can launch a business in 25 minutes, basically, you know, which is really an incredible thing. I don't know how much of that is going to be, you know, represented in the coming months. I mean, the discretionary income seems to be taking a definite hit. So we have obviously a lot of economic challenges ahead, along with other challenges, political challenges, medical challenges, financial challenges, food challenges. I mean, we're at a really tough crossroads as a country. But again, I think there's something American about saying, all right, well, we'll throw that on our shoulders too, and we'll plow through it and see where it takes us. We're not going to quit. And I think that's probably the boat most of us are in. I know the boat, most of the folks who read my stuff and watch us and watch you are not independently wealthy. So we're trying to navigate a very difficult situation. And it's good to have some intel that's providing folks with, I think, a good opportunity to cut out a lot of the bullshit and be able to do that and save time. Because
I'm glad you used that word opportunity, Mike, because one of the most important things, a lot of people ask me, what should we do? It's a difficult question to answer, but anytime you're faced with a challenge, you can either, you know, cry yourself to sleep and just give up, or look for the opportunity in that challenge. And starting a business, you know, it's difficult, but people are going to have to change what they're doing. I heard that 83% of restaurants are not going to reopen. You, of course, have TruePundit.com. Now, Mike, you're not worried that in challenging the big guys, you can start a business, run a business, and then Andrew Cuomo is going to step on its neck, single you out like so many bars in Manhattan?
Yeah, he's done that with Lucky's down in the Village, I think, Lucky's, and another place, the Tavern Line, I think, is another bar, and not in the city, but out of the city. They made fun of him online, and then the next thing you know, they sent in the liquor control board and they closed the places down and suspend a license. I mean, this guy is a real tyrant. Yeah,
that is not a joke. That's like king-like behavior. That's some serious.
Well, the difference is really it's kind of crazy. In journalism, you expect to get pushback because you're taking these people on directly every day, and you expect. If you're doing a good job, I know this sounds crazy, but when I was in my 20s, I was getting death threats and things like that at the newspaper. You expect that when you're taking on people, right? And that's just part of the territory. But when you're running a bar, really, you can't make fun of these guys. I've said earlier, they have no sense of humor. They're communists. The communists have no sense of humor. They think every single thing you do to them is a personal affront. So even if you lampoon them in a cartoon, you see this with certain religious sects. A cartoon comes out and they call for people to be beheaded. I mean, it's like, dude, it's a joke. Relax. We don't like jokes. We're crazy. Okay, we don't appreciate jokes and humor, and so this is what you're dealing with. If Cuomo was a stable guy, he would just let it roll up. Good one. That's a good one. Okay, it's pretty good. They got me, and go about his business. Big deal. You can't expect to be in his position and not take it on the chin, and you're beyond ridicule and stuff. I mean, this guy's like a little kid. He's like a child.
Yeah.
So in journalism, you always run the risk of them trying to shut you down, but that's usually a good thing when they come for you. They usually end up making you bigger than you are, and it's tough enough to get noticed when you're small. So if they want to gun for you, that's a good thing. But you're right; these guys, they're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond jokes, Mike, because this is a guy who obviously is operating with impunity. He thinks he can do whatever he wants, send the police to specific businesses. You know, I'm really getting frustrated that there hasn't been a substantial legal challenge to the governor of New York. I mean, it's almost too late. So many businesses have been destroyed. This report in Zero Hedge was saying 83% of the restaurants that remain in Manhattan can't pay their rent.
I'll give Zero Hedge some credit. I've been on their shit before, because I just don't care. I'm not out to make friends, but they've really been killing it. I give them a lot of credit. So the problem here that we see with Cuomo is a theme you and I have talked about on our shows. I don't know how many shows. I think is this the weekend? I think this is 2 years. I think we've been doing this
really?
for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I think
we
so.
better check.
Or it's coming up on 2 years within a week or so. Okay. So
time flies.
we've been talking. It does. It really, really does.
When your liberties are being thrashed.
I'd like to go back to 2 years ago. Like, give me some of my liberties from 2 years ago. Right. But the theme is that we've talked about. When you let little tyrants like this fester and you don't put them away for their crimes, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've seen it time and time again. This guy should have been shut down a long time ago by a functional whatever, okay? Law enforcement apparatus, political apparatus in New York. No, instead he's allowed to run wild. He's a communist. He's a crazed communist. Now, a report comes out today that more elderly people than ever thought before were killed in these nursing home facilities. And this guy sits in front of everybody and says it's not political. And I've said time and time again, a guy like Barr should have at least civil rights investigations going on. I think if somebody kills you, that's probably a violation of your civil rights. I'm no legal attorney, but I think if you die, you might have had your civil rights violated. But more so than that, I would want to see emails, anything I could get from these guys to see if there was like a scheme where they said, let's pack these places. Let's pack these long-term care facilities and nursing homes and see how many we could knock off. I mean, you don't know what you're going to find when you investigate. The problem is nobody cares.
Well, and the other problem is that Cuomo has the ability to shut these investigations down, as you've been reporting. So there's a report that suggests... He investigated
himself.
Oh, yeah, he found nothing wrong.
Investigated himself. Found nothing wrong. Yeah.
It's really, it's not a laughing matter.
The country, this is why there's supposed to be checks and balances, right? When the states run amok, you're supposed to have somebody like the DOJ swoop in and say, yo, you're out of control. We got to take a look at you now. You might have done something wrong. But it doesn't work that way anymore. It's like these entities only come down on you if you don't have the ability to fight back, whether it's in the media or financially. So the rich and the elites and all your favorite trading card politicians, they're all protected one way or the other. I mean, when's the last time somebody from Washington, D.C. went to jail? When?
I don't know.
A politician.
Almost Michael Flynn, but they're just continuing to toy with him like a cat might do to a mouse. There's so much for us to talk about.
Let's talk away real quick on Flynn.
Sure.
I took a lot of heat. I said this a year ago. This is not going away. People are like, Flynn's out of the woods. I said, no. And you have to admit, I said, no, he's not. You don't understand. And people are like, you're against him. I'm like, no. I'm not against anybody. I'm just telling you what I hear from the inside. These guys are not going to let this go. And what has played out time and time again is exactly what I said. they're not letting it go. It won't go
Right.
away. There's
Yep.
major issues. There's a massive tug of war going on in the DOJ and even in judicial and the district court in DC, right? There's a huge tug of war, and you're seeing that play out. And I've said that. And so every time someone does a victory dance for General Flynn, what have I said to you? I said, not so fast. Let's just
Yeah.
relax. I mean, it's there have been positive signs, but these guys, the deep state, man, they don't play.
Right.
They don't play.
I mean, it's got very little to do with the law and what's right
Yeah.
and justice. It's just what they can
It's got nothing
get away
to
with.
do with that. Yeah, it has to do with leverage and unfortunately blackmail, timing and who owes who what and what the perceived wrongs have been and maybe how Flynn conducted himself behind the scenes. Maybe he ruffled a lot of feathers and these people are, like I said, they have no sense of humor. They take everything as a personal affront. Can't blame a guy for hustling for his freedom to stay out of jail, but how many feathers did he ruffle? You have to look at all this stuff. So, and I think what happened today in the district, they said the case journey's on. Am I right?
Yeah,
they said
the on-bank review. I don't know if they gave a decision, but I knew Emmett Sullivan was going to do this. Jared Beck thought he might not because it was an extreme step, but I just knew the guy was going to use everything in his palette to be able to delay, obstruct, punish, cost more money for Flynn. I mean, obviously he's got to pay Sidney Powell. She's she's not a giant law firm. They want to wear down her resources too. What are they going to do to her? Becomes the question.
That could be a detriment to her, this whole process as well. These guys are vicious. When you take these guys on, they're vicious. And the fact that she's not a major firm like Covington or something like that, or any of these major firms that would have the wherewithal to stomach that and also have the political clout to cut deals behind the scenes and say, yo,
resources,
let's tie it off. Let's come to an agreement, right? So unfortunately, I've been right the whole time. I'm not looking for a trophy because it's unfortunate, but I understand how these things. And again, I'm just a product. I'm just a messenger of what I hear from inside, from guys who are well placed who say they've told us specifically, don't go out and celebrate anything with Flynn because it's far from over. And I'm saying to them behind the scenes, even Flynn is celebrating. What are you talking about? Like, no, I'm telling you, just hold your horses. And everything they've told me has been spot. You have to admit, everything that they told me has been spot on, right? And it's unfortunate because the guy can't. Every time he turns around, it seems like he has a victory. They snatch it from him. And I'll drop this right now. There's nothing, God forbid, if Trump loses, there's nothing preventing DOJ from coming back,
reopening it up
after him.
That's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do. They want to keep him in play until after the election so they can continue to terrorize him.
If anybody thinks this on-bank decision will be before the election, I would rate that as almost 90% unlikely. On-bank, these things take a long time. They take their time. They seem to drag on for a long time. And then whenever they come up with something, there's probably some negotiations behind the scenes, and they have to write a long opinion, and then there's a dissenting opinion usually, and there's a, whichever way it goes. But we looked at the court, we looked at the DC Court of Appeals that it's going to, okay, and we split all the judges down that have the opportunity to vote on this, and it's split I think it's 8-8 basically when you split it down. 8 of the judges were appointed by the Democrats, and 8 of the judges were appointed by Republicans. So we went and we looked at every single person what president they were appointed by. The trouble is, some of those 8 who are GOP appointees, it's like George Bush. I mean, he's like, so is it like, are they really conservatives? No, I don't think they are. Is John Roberts a conservative on the Supreme Court? Right. So you have to look at these things. So I would say, now, not every judge has to weigh in during the on-bank review. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It's their choice. They can if they want. But I would say, based on the split, if we were just looking at it on paper, the advantage would be to Sullivan on this. The advantage would be slightly to Sullivan because of some of the appointees by basic rhino presidents that are GOP, but I wouldn't necessarily call them Reagan Republicans, right? I would say that based on the mold of a John Roberts appointee, that kind of thing, that the slight advantage goes to Judge Sullivan. Now, he knew this. Obviously, he probably got to send up a couple weather balloons before he did this. He's not going to make a fool out of himself, and that also is concerning. Two folks out here that are trying to find some justice for General Flynn. So it's not over yet, and just as I said, they're not going to let this go. They have a real bug up their ass about this whole thing, and we're seeing it play out. I mean, just think about it. The Justice Department said they don't even want to pursue it, and they're like, "Nope, doesn't matter, doesn't matter." It's like, wait a minute, what is going on here? It's very complicated, and
well, Mike, I want to bring it around to one of our favorite topics because we're talking about rhinos, conservatives. I don't even think it's a matter of conservatives and liberals. It's just who is part of the theft crew and who is not. And I mean, you and I have spoken as much as anybody about William Barr, and we are not fans of him. We have lots of reasons to distrust him. He's pictured here with Joe Biden. This was back in the day, the Iran-Contra era. And while all this was going on, there's something really pretty important that happened that has gone virtually unnoticed. I was speaking with Larry Nichols about this earlier today. And just last week, Elliot Abrams was appointed as a special envoy to Iran. This is a guy who was a key player. I think he was the Assistant Secretary of State during Iran-Contra. And William Barr participated in the pardoning of this guy. Nobody has made a peep about this.
Well, I'm not surprised because of the revolving door of all these folks. And don't forget, if you made it through that Contra situation and you didn't rat anybody out, then know that you're a dependable player to use. You're a dependable soldier, and you can, because if you didn't rat anybody out in your prime when the chips were down, chances are you won't rat anybody out now. It's as simple as that. But here's what I was told about Barr in relation to Flynn, and people can excoriate me or throw rocks at me, but remember that you're doing that to a messenger who is getting information from inside. And I've said this to you previously when we talk about Flynn, and I'll make it brief. The Barr DOJ pulling back the charges against Barr and saying we're not interested was a sham. The whole thing was a sham against Flynn. The optics were that it would make Barr look good and Trump look good and not alienate the base. Okay. But the deal was already cut with Barr's DOJ that judiciary, and namely Flynn, would press it. So it was they were going to get what they wanted anyhow. But Barr had the opportunity to pull back and make it look like, hey, I don't want this to happen, and the president doesn't want this to happen. But a deal was cut behind the scenes where they could do that, and the establishment that has a real axe to grind with Flynn could still run Flynn down. And I said that, I don't know, 3 months ago when all this was happening, and people thought I was crazy. But that's exactly the way it's played out. And again, I just say what people tell me from inside that I trust and who I've trusted for a long time. And these guys are never wrong. So, and it's usually against the pack. Everybody's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about at the time. But then 3 months, 5 months, 6 months later, like, holy moly, this dude nailed it again, right? Because it's all about your access and who you have on the inside.
Well, it's also your experience of seeing how these things develop, how they go, knowing how that whole system works. You're like the guy sitting there at the horse race who's just up in the stands and knows what horse is going to do what. And everyone's like, how do you call the horses, Mike?
Well, you have to understand, I ran around like a chicken with my head cut off for 30 years. And after you do that, you start to think, wait a minute. One, I don't have to run around anymore. Two, I've seen it all. So I can just take my time with things. Yeah. Pick up the phone, talk to people, don't feel pressure and stuff. And understand that with what we're doing, you and I, we have a responsibility to cut through all the bullshit that they hear on all these TV shows of people who are literally, and I've knocked them before, but you can't knock them hard enough. They really don't know what's going on. They're told what to say, and they just want to make it through the 48 minutes or whatever they have, the 38 minutes. All right. And then they're on to the next 38 minutes the next night, and they're cashing in, making mad cash. They could say anything. People be like, oh, that's interesting. Right. Because when you watch your TV, you're almost like a bird brain. Look, at the end of the day, at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, you're not at your best. Right. I mean, I prove that every Tuesday. Okay. But seriously, you need to cut through this stuff and save yourself from the aggravation, and know that to a large extent, this is like a massive game. And General Flynn is involved in one hell of a game. Right?
He's the puck.
None of this makes
basically.
Well, none of this makes any. And it all goes back to what I've said a million times. When nothing seems to make sense, and everything involved in any subject defies logic, or odds or probability, there's corruption involved. That's the only answer. So there has to be corruption involved. It's as simple as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The ratings for the podcast might continue to explode. Look at this. As more people rate it, it just keeps going up. A lot of people enjoying the Thomas Paine podcast, and they're going to be able to.
We're happy. We're happy with it. We got, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking about breaking things down, analyzing things quickly for people, and I think there's an appreciation there. And
I think we need to vote, however. People are going to have to weigh in if they preferred my rendition of It's a Horrendous Day in Mike's Neighborhood or Wheel in the Sky. People have to tune into the podcast to judge.
You're listening to a little Wheel in the Sky. I cut it loose last night. I said, you know
were
what?
Singing. I was like, hey.
Cut it loose. Wheel in the Sky. I could do Steve Perry. People are like, whoa, what's that about? Some guy said, obviously you're using a synthesizer or something. I said, that's just me, man.
Oh.
That's just me. Give me a couple tequilas. I'll sing. I can rock and roll, man. Give me a microphone.
But the other thing you did, Mike, that is worth mentioning, it was sort of the journalistic equivalent of pointing the bat at the outfield and then cracking it out there. You interviewed, is his name Hoffenberg? What's the guy who was in the Ponzi scheme with? Stephen
Hoffenberg. Yeah. I got him. I got him. And interviewed him last week, and I interviewed him today too. I just caught him up out of nowhere. I was like, yo, what's going on? He's like, who the hell is this?
Is that really what he said?
Yeah, he's like, who is this? I said, it's me. Remember, you talked to me last week. We're best buddies now, right? No, seriously. But I talked to him today, and he was telling me some crazy stuff today about Epstein. And I said, you want to do a podcast? And he goes, yeah, when do you want to do it? I said, we can do it right now. And he's like, really? And it's like, that's the beauty about podcasting, right? It's like, we're doing a podcast right now. We're talking.
Yeah.
And so we laid down some tracks. It was crazy. But we talked for a while, and he's put his own team together now to try to peel back what Ghislaine and Jeffrey were up to, because he feels like he was involved in this scheme for a long time. And now, I asked him straight up, are you on a vision quest? And he said, basically, yeah, he's 75. He doesn't know how much time he has left. There's been no justice for the victims, and that's where his focus is at. And he's a person of means, and I think that he has put a team together, and he's doing kind of like a Moynihan and Doyle type situation, but he's doing it with Epstein instead of the IRS. So. And the Clinton Foundation. So I think this guy is going to be aces. Now
he might make Alan Dershowitz look quite stupid. I don't mean to step on what you're saying, Mike, but we're very, very close to the moment.
Yeah, it's cool. We'll talk about more tonight. We got more to talk about tonight, and
we're going to transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment. People can watch us on subscribestar.com/TruePundit, Patreon.com/TruePundit. and Subscribestar and Patreon/Crowdsource the Truth. I do need to let our viewers who are using the Brave browser know you got to turn off the ad blocker on your Brave browser. That's been the latest technical support question. But other than that, Mike, people have been loving more Paine the sponsor exclusive segment. And also after the show tonight, people who are sponsors on Patreon and Subscribestar/True Pundit are going to get the first access to the Thomas Paine podcast. And of course, sponsors always get access to the commercial-free video version of Paine in the Morning. It's a great way to stay on top of the latest scoops that Mike and the crew at TruePundit.com are putting out every day. Mike, we'll be back in just under 5 minutes where we will carry on the conversation. And we also have to talk about incompetence meets incontinence as Kamala Harris becomes president. I mean, is named vice president, running mate for Joe Biden. Hopefully they all lose, because that would be an awful outcome otherwise.
Yeah, I said, if Biden wins, where can I sign up to get COVID-19?
Exactly. Mike, I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in,
all right,
everybody.
man.
We'll see you on the sponsor exclusive segment.